Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the firm differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm super excited for the guest today. The reason I'm excited is because this has been somebody who I have been wanting to have on the show for a long time. And finally, the stars have aligned and we have come together to record this episode for you. She actually first got on my calendar in December of 2020. For the interview, and then we had to reschedule. She had to reschedule, so it got pushed off, and we had our law firm growth summit in between, and it just wasn't meant to be until now, which means that we are both 3 months smarter. So you're going to get even better, a better show out of it. So super excited to have Elise Buie here with me today. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Elise. You probably have seen her around because she's definitely known in the social stratosphere when it comes to law firm owners. But Elise Buie is a Seattle attorney who has run a virtual family law practice since 2015. Elise is also a divorced mom, stepmom of 6, who thrived through Hurricane Katrina, divorce, relocation, and opening her own law firm. Elise specializes in supporting parents as they shift from their spouse brain to their co-CEOs of Team Child Brain so that they can co-parent in their strengths while maximizing their children and minimizing destructive conflict. Elise is also the host of the Maximum Mom podcast, a fairly new show, but a show that is putting out a very important message for those law firm owners who are trying to thrive as a law firm owner while at the same time thriving as a parent who is taking care of their children and trying to create the best version of their kids. So I really love the concept of her show. I love what she's creating and what she's putting out there. And I'm super excited to have her here today. Now, before I bring her onto the show, we're just going to take a moment and give you some insight into some of our sponsors who make this show possible. Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. # delegate your way to freedom. Learn more at www.getstaffedup.com/VIP. As an attorney, you want to get more done for your clients while converting leads into new business. But your days are filled with drafting documents, meetings, court appearances, speaking with opposing counsel, and making sure no one falls through the cracks. This leaves you with little time to focus on your business. Meet Lawmatics, the most powerful client intake and marketing automation CRM built for the modern law practice. With Lawmatics, you can win more business, impress clients, and be more efficient. Go to www.lawmatics.com to book your personalized demo and learn how Lawmatics can help you grow your firm. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Welcome back. Elise, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I know it's going to be worth the wait since you and I had such trouble getting it on the calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the truth is that the Law Firm Growth Summit is something that took 6 months to prepare for, and then 3 days to put out there. And then the week after that, I needed a break. So then we had everybody who was waiting to talk to me, and everyone who I was waiting to talk to piled into the calendar. And my last 2 weeks have been absolutely crazy, with me being literally on Zoom calls and phone calls and everything all day long. So Thursday is my recording day, and my calendar's blocked. Nobody else can get on the calendar except for my podcast guests. So I'm glad you were able to find a Thursday that worked so we can be here. I want to just give our listeners an idea of who you are. If they don't know who Elise Buie is, who are you? And you know, in your bio, you've got this interesting thing of you specialize in supporting parents as they shift from their spouse brain to their co-CEOs of team child brain. And I just want to understand what that means. So let us know who you are, and then explain exactly what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, who I am, I'm Elise, and I am an attorney in Seattle, a family law attorney. I come from New Orleans, though. So, I mean, I have a huge New Orleans bent to me. You know, people look at my logo, it's the combination of the Space Needle and the fleur-de-lis. I mean, I grew up in New Orleans my whole life and left with Hurricane Katrina. And so I definitely am a Southern girl at heart. You know, I have a lot of those Southern tendencies. I drop y'all bombs even in court still. But I definitely am trying to get rid of my y'all bombs in court, but they're still come out. I have been running a virtual law firm since 2015. I started the firm, I mean, very systematically, because I had a daughter who was going off to college and I had no college savings. My husband and I had divorced. My new husband and I together have 6 children. You know, they all were looking at college at that time. So I started my law firm solely to pay for my daughter to go to Smith. And that's where she was going to college. And I was like, whoa, this is going to be a big deal, paying for all these kids to go to college. So, I had gone through my own divorce, and that kind of brings us to your question about the spouse brain versus the co-CEOs of Team Child. I had gone through a divorce, relocated to Seattle, and my ex and I have gone through the gambit. I mean, we've had, you know, a very contentious at times situation. And then we have also evolved over time. I mean, in a lot because of all the learning I have done, you know, as both a family law professional, but also as a guardian ad litem. I mean, I have done extensive work as a guardian ad litem or a parenting evaluator in high conflict cases. And I came to learn very quickly that the conflict is what damages the children. And so my ex and I have truly mastered how to be co-CEOs of our children. And I mean, we have the most just easygoing, pleasant kind of rapport. Our son goes back and forth. We only have one son left at home. The other children have now, you know, gone on to college and gone on. But I mean, I just texted him just last night. I think we were talking about driving our son to college and who was doing what. And I'm going to be driving the son to college with his stepdad. And so I asked my ex, I was like, well, can you come stay at our new house with Ethan's kitties and take care of them for 2 weeks while we do this trip? And he was like, yeah, of course. You know, and it's that kind of rapport. And I think that if more and more people could understand how the conflict is what damages children, not the divorce, children would be so much better off.
It's very, very interesting. And there's a lot of people who might have been in a similar situation who are thinking, wow, this is kind of like that, like, oh, I want to be like the Joneses moment, like if only me and my ex would be like that, and if only my new spouse would understand or accept my ex to the point where they're watching his kids. It's wild to think that that's where you've arrived and that's where you landed. I don't know if you know this about me, but I also was married, got divorced. I have three daughters from my first marriage, and now I'm married again. So my wife was and is a stepmom to my older girls. They're off to college, so they're not they're not here in the house. But my oldest Mimi works here on the team while she's doing her college distance learning, and she's a extremely valuable asset to the team. She is our podcast producer. And she also runs our book club for lawyers. So if you want to check out the book club, it's absolutely free. Search Facebook for the Reader's Nook and just ask to join the group there. And you can join book club for law firm owners over at the Reader's Nook. But what's interesting is that when I started going through my divorce, I didn't have a contentious divorce going on. We met with a mediator. We discussed what we wanted to have, how we were going to split up the kids and how we were going to divide the assets. And we came up with that. And the mediator wrote up a separation agreement. And then I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything and that there wasn't anything, a mediator kind of needs to have both of your interests at heart. So I met with an attorney and had them review the document to make sure that there wasn't anything that I I had missed out on that needed to be discussed. And the attorney, whether he was, just trying to get my business or whether it was legitimate, who knows? He read through it and he's like, an amateur wrote this. This is like, it's missing X, Y, Z. It's got, it doesn't conform to the county, guidelines and blah, blah, blah. And basically, told me we needed a new separation agreement. And I went back to my ex and I said, hey, I met with an attorney and this is what he said. I think that we should have it, rewritten correctly. And she was like, what? You went to meet with an attorney? That's how it's going to be now. So she got her own attorney. And then it turned into a more contentious divorce. And that was the end of the mediation. And that started it probably was a contentious relationship anyway, but it stayed contentious from there. It was not very pleasant at all, dealing with her. She ended up becoming an alcoholic, so the kids ended up moving in with me full time. I got full custody of them. This was a few years later. But one of the things that really bothered me as a single dad, and you as somebody, and I'm not calling you out here on the podcast, but I want to bring it to your attention because there are people out there like me. I was the primary caregiver in my kids' lives. Even when my ex was in the picture, I would get them on Wednesdays and one of them would be sick. Like every Wednesday I would get them and one of them would be sick. And it was almost, I almost knew I need a standing appointment at the pediatrician. I picked them up from school on Wednesday, go to the pediatrician, find out that this one has strep, get them amoxicillin or whatever the medication was for that child, bring them home. And, and then that was our routine. Like I took them to the doctor. Now, I don't know if she just didn't care, wasn't, or if she was just getting me to pay the copay. I have no idea what the motivation was behind it. But for all intents and purposes, I was the mom to my kids, in that relationship. And single dads have this single dad persona around them. And it really bothers me in the space where women create this situation where they're trying to elevate women, but at the same time, they are excluding men, which is the same thing they're trying to overcome. Right. And like your mom podcast, I don't know if I would be a good guest for your show, but I should be.
Mm.
right? I have very similar experiences to the moms. So I'm a
Absolutely.
man, big deal, right?
No, I
So
think you make such a good point. In the divorce and family law arena, I mean, I know at least I see it here in Washington. I can't speak to every state, but I mean, men often get the short end of the stick. I mean, just by walking into court as a man, where, they're coming in with these biased presumptions that the moms are the primary caregivers. And I mean, it is often not the case that the mom is the primary caregiver, and really ferreting those things out, I think, is really meaningful. And I think it's interesting that you had such a unique experience, but I mean, you got to see it over and over again, like when your children were coming over sick and stuff. And I do think stereotypically that happens more to a mom than to a dad. But I mean, I think there is a large, large percentage of dads, especially now where women are working more and more and more, that, I mean, both people are working more and more. And I think that dads are doing much more at home. And I mean, I think the laws are not really keeping up, nor is the mindset. Like I said at the beginning, I work a lot as a guardian ad litem. And I mean, one of the biggest and most important things about being a guardian ad litem is not being biased, is being a neutral advocate, for the best interests of the child, and coming in and analyzing, just like you mentioned, who is the primary parent, who is doing all these things, who's going to the doctor, who's going to the school, and really figuring that out, and then being able to report back to the court, because you've got to look at every family in their specific facts and not as these stereotyping ways. I mean, I have to tell you a little side note. I mean, my experience was very different. I was definitely the primary caretaker. The one time I missed or was going to miss a parent teacher conference was while we were going through our divorce. I was up here in Seattle. um, my ex was back in Minnesota where we lived with our children. There was a snowstorm out here in November, which is unheard of. So I'm literally on a plane. It's going to be late. So I'm texting my ex and I'm like, you need to go to Katie, our oldest daughter's, parent teacher conference. And so he then sends a note to my daughter and he's like, okay, I need you to draft a paragraph about all your classes, what's going on, who your teacher is. And she was like, wait a minute, there is no homework for parent teacher conferences. Like, get that information from mom, And so, that was my example of, oh, okay, he really doesn't know these things. Like, he doesn't go to parent teacher conferences. I historically had. And so, there's a lot of education that goes into, I think, when people divorce. If people are both mentally healthy, there's no substance abuse issues, no mental health. So we take that out of the picture. And if we can get people to see, though, that even no matter how it looked in the past, we're now starting a new day, a new chapter, a new everything. So even if your ex, whether it's the wife or the husband, knew nothing before, if they speak the language that you and your children speak, they read the language you and your children read, they can learn. I mean, there's
yep.
hope. And I think that people, especially women are notorious for not doing this well. They have this attitude of, well, I've been doing it, so it's my way or the highway. And it's like, well, wait a minute.
I
That's
think I think there's more to it. I think that they feel threatened. I think that they feel like that was my job, so I don't want you to encroach on my job. And I maybe to an extent, the feeling of maybe my kids will love me a little bit less because they're going to love him a little bit more because he's more involved than he was before. Like that was what my love was riding on, was how much I was putting into them, and now somebody's encroaching on that.
I think you've hit, I mean, a real nail on the head. I think it is a very hard thing, especially for women, at least in my experience, what I've seen, they become much more possessive of their children in this way, that somehow by sharing that love, it's going to diminish their role as well as their relationship. And really, the reverse is true. and trying to help women in particular understand that the more you share with the dad and the more you support the dad's role with the children and the more you help to make it where it goes smoothly for the children, actually your children will love you even more because it allows them to have a much more fluid, easygoing situation. And it just, all it does is create more love all around, and whereas these parents that do the tug of war and think of it as a pie, like the love is a pie. Love is not a pie. I mean, there's plenty to go around. And I mean, I spend so much time educating my clients on, that love is not a pie and that, they can be the greatest mom in the world as they're helping their child transition to enjoy life at dad's house half the time and, make that transition go well. It requires, though, people to really, I think, be a lot bigger than maybe they naturally want to be in such a tough transition period. It's a lot of
Absolutely.
emotional stuff. And so, I mean, I don't mean to make it sound easy because it's not. I mean, but I think, and it was interesting listening to your story about your attorney. I mean, this is what happens all the time. Attorneys literally turn agreed settlements into wars. And I mean, finding an attorney who's emotionally attuned enough to hear what you came to them about, understand what your concerns were, but then be able to communicate it in a way where your mediation agreement withstood the test of the attorney, not where it gets thrown out the window, because obviously the most durable agreements are made by the people, not by the lawyers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the truth is although we did definitely reference the document, but how much are we really going back and checking the document? The bottom line is that if I was supposed to have them for Hanukkah and she wants them for Hanukkah, we'll come to an agreement where I get them for Passover when I wasn't supposed to have them, so she could have them for Hanukkah. So who cares what's in the agreement, right? It's just, maybe we forgot who had them last year for Passover. So we're going to look in the agreement and see who it was supposed to be so we remember. But you're absolutely right. And there's some stuff that's in there that it's a one and done thing.
Right.
Like, okay, who's getting the Durango and who's getting the Impala and who's getting the retirement account. And when you work those things out, it's worked out. Like, who cares how it's written and what, whether it's got the right letters capitalized and things like that. But what's interesting is that there's, that you spend so much of your world in this topic. And what's interesting is before we started recording the show, we were talking about team development and you were talking about how you pour into your teams. And people who are listening to this podcast are like, well, I never was divorced. This is not relevant to me, but it absolutely is. And I want to make this parallel, and you tell me how you feel about this. When we're building a team in our law practice, those are our kids, right? And we're in this parenting relationship with our team, and it's very similar. There is so much similarity between when you look at even the business itself could be looked at as one of your children, right? And if you look at the stages, right, it's got to learn how to eat, it's got to learn how to breathe, it's got to learn how to crawl, how to walk, how to talk. And as you go through these stages, you have to go through a progression. It doesn't go to adulthood overnight. And the same thing with your staff. There's going to be internal quarrels between staff members. There's going to be people who don't know how to do something. You're going to have to train them. All of that stuff. There's a lot of parallels to parenting, which almost makes me think that engaged parents are hardwired to be better firm owners. What do you think about that?
I would agree with that. I mean, I would really agree with that. I do think there's a balance, though. Now, I have to tell you, I mean, full disclosure, I am not a helicopter parent type at all. I mean, I am very much, I've raised my children to be independent. I mean, I've started very early on. I mean, my children learned to do chores early on. And I had the mindset of once I taught them to do something, that was considered delegated. It was off my plate and I was not doing it anymore. I mean, things like laundry, making all their lunches. I mean, all kinds of things. And like when my children become juniors in high school, I stop managing their doctor appointments and dentist appointments. I want them to take that over so that when they go to college, I know they can take care of themselves, and handle all that. And so I think that for me, being an engaged parent is that I just want to draw that line, because I think some parents enable their children in a way that is very unhealthy, and they're constantly what I call either a helicopter parent, or nowadays, sometimes people call them lawnmower parents, where they're literally getting in front of their child, like creating these paths of no resistance. And I'm not in favor of that. And I don't do that for my team either. I mean, I do want people to be independent and accountable, and I want people to live in integrity. But I think you're exactly right as far as, when we as parents, I mean, what our goal is to provide the systems so that our children can do well. We provide training, we provide opportunities, for growth and learning, just like we do as an employer. We figure out what their strengths are. We let our children try all kinds of activities and do different things. Then we figure out what their strengths are and we help them grow in those strengths. And it's the same thing with our team. And I think for me, I mean, one of my highest goals is pouring into my team and really trying, to dream big with them. We just had a meeting this morning and one of my team members was saying, she's like, yeah, I got to dream big with Elise yesterday. That was her professional win of the week. And I thought, how fun is that? Like, being able to sit down with a team member and ask them, like, what is your ideal position 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And even if that answer has nothing to do with working in my law firm and it's them doing something else, being able to help facilitate that and help them reach their goals. I love that. That's like my favorite part of being an employer. And it was my favorite part of being a mom too.
Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. # delegate your way to freedom. Learn more at www.getstaffedup.com/VIP. As an attorney, you want to get more done for your clients while converting leads into new business. But your days are filled with drafting documents, meetings, court appearances, speaking with opposing counsel, and making sure no one falls through the cracks. This leaves you with little time to focus on your business. Meet Lawmatics, the most powerful client intake and marketing automation CRM built for the modern law practice. With Lawmatics, you can win more business, impress clients, and be more efficient. Go to www.lawmatics.com to book your personalized demo and learn how Lawmatics can help you grow your firm. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by try Smith AI.
Really
Yeah, and
watching my kids develop.
that shines through in the way that you're describing it. But what people might have a hard time wrapping their head around is, why should I pour into somebody who's then going to go and compete with me, or is then going to go and leave me to do something else? And I love the fact that you see that as an opportunity and not as a detriment, to be able to give them the stepping stones in the path to be able to get to their future, even if it means that 3 years from now, 5 years from now, that person might not be working for you. And all of this work that you put into them to get them to be that A player in your firm, are going to, in theory, be lost, but it's not lost. And one of the things when law firm owners make their first hire, or one of their first hires, one of the things that you will soon come to find, if you're listening to this and you haven't done it yet, and if you are, you're going to be shaking your head in a minute, is that hiring somebody and needing to delegate work to them is the best education for you as a firm owner, because you're going to very quickly learn that you need to be organized with what you're doing in order to be able to facilitate somebody else to be able to do that. And it's going to force you to create systems. It's going to force you to be more methodical about the things that you do. And it's going to create some structure in your life that you probably didn't need otherwise. And it's going back to this example, it's kind of like, if you were single, you were carefree, you can do whatever you wanted. But as soon as you have a child that you're caring for, you suddenly are bound by that. You can't just go out to the bar at 11 o'clock at night. You kind of need to get a babysitter before you do that, right? And so the same thing in your law firm. You can't just put somebody in and just say, oh, here, go do your thing, walk away, and expect that it's going to be done. You kind of need to show them the path, nurture them. But I love what you said about not being the helicopter parent and helping them learn how to fend for themselves, because that's ultimately what we want to do. We had Molly McGrath here on the podcast. You and I mentioned her before as well, before we started recording. We both really love Molly as far as, her expertise and her as an individual. She's just a wonderful person. Her message is to build intrapreneurs in your firm. She's termed this entrepreneur like an entrepreneur, but they don't own the business, but they're acting as if they own the business. In other words, they're making decisions on their own. They're doing things that are going to elevate the firm, even though it's not their company. And that's the ultimate goal, is to raise a team that's going to behave that way. And ultimately, that's what's going to allow you to sit and watch eagles on the lake instead of being busy working.
Absolutely. It's the thing we just recently rolled out using the traction and the EOS system. We work with Fireproof, Michael Morris and his Fireproof coaching program. But we've rolled out a leadership team, and it has been amazing to me to watch these people, some of them who have been with me for years. And so I've watched them grow up in the firm, and then others that have come in new, then others that are just completely from the outside. Seeing this leadership team coalesce and be, just like Molly describes, these entrepreneurs who are truly working, making decisions, and they have my vision. They have what, I want the firm to be, but they are able to do so much more than I am. They are so much better, like all their brains combined. I sometimes sit in leadership meetings just mind blown, because I've, some problem I've been struggling with for years, and I've been banging my head against the wall, and then we'll have a 30-minute conversation and they have reframed the problem in a way that I wasn't able to see it. They've come up with collaborative solutions that I didn't think of. And I am just like, oh my gosh, I love you people. And it's just amazing to watch and to see what they can accomplish, and just to see the brain power. There's 7 of us total all together. I feel like we're kind of unstoppable, as far as our brain power goes. And it's been really interesting to watch them develop, where they're making decisions and they're always thinking of the firm. They'll say things like, well, yeah, this is what we've done in the past, but this would be better for the office in the future. And I'm like, wow, just that they think like that. and it's been hugely helpful. And again, it's so similar when you think of children, because as your children get older and older and they're in college, and they will say the same kind of things. They'll be like, "Oh, mom, I really understand why you made that decision, when I was in high school. That made a lot of sense for the family, even though at the time I was angry." And
Yep.
it's your ultimate, to me, it's like the highest reward when your children can come back and they can see like why you did certain things that might have felt hard at the time. And I don't mean to say my children always agree. Don't get me wrong. There are times that they're like, mom, I really wouldn't have done it that way. But we're able to have an intellectual discussion about it and understand each other. And to me, I mean, that's a huge win.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to love on my older kids, Mimi I already spoke about, who works here, but Goldie, my 19-year-old, just finished a year and a half in Israel, and she lined up her own job in Houston, Texas. I'm in New York. She's Houston, Texas. She flew there, and she's working there. She's doing school remotely because the school is not in person anyway. And she lined up a job for herself, working as an assistant in a private school there, and they're housing her. They give her a car to use, and I don't know where she, how she found it or whatever, but she's got motivation. She knows that she wants to do certain things. She knows that she needs some money in the bank, so she's got to make things happen. And then the one right behind her, my 18-year-old, she's in Israel now studying abroad, and she decided that she wanted to be a drama head. They put on a school production, and they had 5 different teams that competed against each other. So they all created one long play, but 5 sections of it were created by 5 different teams. And it was a contest, and her team took first. She won. I didn't even know she had it in her, but she's, they're motivated to, to do their thing and to find what lights them up. And, and she's always been a leader, even though she's the 3rd child and she was not a leader at home. Amongst her friends and amongst, her circles, she's always been taking initiative and leading others. And it's just amazing to see them grow into those roles. Building a team here, same thing. I mean, we brought on 2 new staff members a few months before the summit, knowing that we needed extra manpower leading into the summit. And when we went into it, we created a customer service booth, and they manned the booth, right? We had no idea what issues we were going to have coming up. So we talked about some of the possibilities beforehand, and we worked through some processes of how to solve them. Ultimately, the actual issues that we had were very different than what we anticipated, right? But I was running the event. I didn't hear anything.
Right.
I literally, they worked through, I mean, it was the most attended spot in the entire event was our customer service booth. And they worked through over 400 customer service requests throughout the event. And I literally was pretty much hands off for almost all of it. And it's just amazing when you see these things happen and come to fruition because of the vision that you had. And I'm assuming that you're the visionary in the EOS system there.
I am definitely. I am the idea girl. I mean, I drive my team crazy. I'm that person that wakes up in the middle of the night and I'm like, I have a great idea. And they're like, oh gosh, here she is again with another one of her ideas. But I mean, I've definitely had to embrace that. I mean, I am 100% a visionary type. I mean, it's interesting with your summit, when you sent out the information about for people to be speakers, there was like a thing like you had to do. And I thought that's beyond me. I was like, I would have to give that to somebody else on my team. And I laughed. I was like, oh my gosh, Elise, you should just not be such a visionary. I mean, there's times I need to just sit down and, be able to do paperwork, but it's not my strength.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with handing that to somebody on your team and saying, here, do it. As a matter of fact, Mimi, who is my podcast producer, when I have an opportunity to be a guest on someone else's podcast, I hand it to her and I say, here, get me scheduled, put me on the calendar, answer the forms, give them my headshot, whatever they need. Like for me, it's completely hands off. I just know I want to be on the show, and that's the end of it for me. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I do plenty of paperwork anyway. I do plenty of paperwork in my household. I don't have a staff to delegate our medical bills to. It's I got to take care of it. It sits in a pile for a very long time before I get to it, but eventually I do have to take care of it. Yeah. And talking about the visionary. So for those of you who don't know, there's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman, and he introduces, it's actually on the shelf right behind me. So for those of you watching on video, it's, I'm a big fan of Traction. And that's why it's sitting there. And when I do my coaching with my clients, that's one of the books I send them at the beginning of our engagement. So in the book, Gino puts this idea out there that at the head of the company, at the top, there's two people. There's a visionary and there's an integrator. And the visionary is the person who's got all the ideas, and the integrator is the one who is really excited to go and implement whatever it is that we decide to do. And usually when you start the business, you're doing both. You're the visionary and the integrator. The faster you can get to separating those two roles, the faster you'll get to massive success with growing your practice, because you're not naturally both. So one of those is being forced with you doing it, and you have to figure out which one you are. Maybe you have to hire, a CEO, or maybe you have to hire an office manager, but you got to figure out where you are. And you might actually not be either, by the way. So some firm owners, you're the technician. You want to be a lawyer. You don't even actually want to have, you don't want to have the vision, and you don't want to be the integrator. You just want to be one of the people who's going to court and working with your clients. And if you're that person, then you need to hire both roles. You need to bring in a visionary, you need to bring in an integrator, or just stay a solo and collect a paycheck for the work that you're doing and not try to grow bigger than that. But the point I wanted to make with the visionary, do you know Jamie Tardy?
No.
So she hosts a podcast called The Eventual Millionaire. And in that podcast, she interviews millionaire business owners. And she's been running that podcast for many years. I started listening to her before the iPhone was invented. So I met her in Austin, Texas. I was there for a conference, and I met her in a bar. We had a conversation, and then we took our conversation offline on LinkedIn. She told me that when she gets a new client, she sends them a gift, and she sends them a waterproof pad for them to hang on the wall in the shower with waterproof markers. So basically, because when we're in the shower, it's one of those moments where we're really taking a step back and not thinking about anything, not having any distractions, and that's when ideas come to us. So if you're sitting there saying, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, go to Amazon and go buy one of these waterproof pads, because sometimes the ideas come and they go, and by the time we get out of the shower, we're like, oh, what was that? It was such a good idea, but I can't remember what it was. Now, usually if you can't remember what it was, it probably wasn't such a good idea anyway, but that's just something that she did that I thought was genius, to capture those ideas when they come to you.
It's so important, because I do think visionaries, I know for myself, I have so many ideas every day, like that's how my brain just rolls, and it's so hard to remember them all. And I find when I'm driving, I'm always talking to my phone. Like I'll tell Siri, I'm like, would you record this in my notes section? And I just have a notes that says Elise's random ideas. And I just record them all there, and then I review them and go back to them. And a lot of times I'll see themes, in my ideas. And so that'll kind of give me an idea about, well, what is it that I'm kind of worried about? Or what is it, I'm really ruminating on that we might need to look at in business.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're talking to your phone when you're driving. It's definitely a safer way to do it than the way I do it. But you're right. Writing the ideas down, having a place where you can go to them. The next level is to have somebody on your staff go through those notes for you and organize your thoughts and ideas, so that when you have a meeting, you can run through them with your team and be like, nope, yes. For those ideas. But I want to switch gears here for a moment. Elise, I want to ask you this question, and this is coming out of left field, but I wanted to make sure that we touched on it. How do you know when you've arrived? Like for you, what's your end goal with your firm? Like what is your vision of where you want to take it? You've been doing this for a while. You've clearly succeeded to a great extent. I mean, you have a team of 7. You've implemented EOS. It seems like from the conversation that we're having, things are cooking on all cylinders. What's the vision for you?
Well, I would say one part of the vision for me is developing our firm even larger than what it is, because I do feel like we bring a very unique perspective to family law. I mean, my ultimate vision is to disrupt how family law is practiced so that people do not come to an attorney thinking it's a win-lose model. Rather, they come to an attorney who they're looking for somebody who's emotionally intelligent, who's going to be attuned to their needs, and who's going to help them creatively problem solve and get their family to the other side, but more whole than they are when they arrive in the lawyer's office, not less whole. And so, I mean, we really strive to be holistic partners with our clients, helping them, bringing in other resources, whether it's financial neutrals, psychologists, child specialists, whatever they need, so that we are getting people to the other side of divorce positively. Divorce does not need to psychologically destroy an entire generation of children. I mean, it is ridiculous that we, all of us, I mean, who are smart people who are getting divorced, many people get divorced, whether we like it or not. We could have a whole conversation about that, issue, but it is what it is. And we need to make the divorce process a process that brings wholeness and healing, not just warfare and destruction. And so, I mean, that is my ultimate goal, is to disrupt how family law is practiced. I also have a very strong um, leaning towards helping moms and helping moms find their jam in what they're doing with being a lawyer, an entrepreneur, being a mom, because I think that so many of us have been in situations where we don't have the flexibility in our work. We don't have what we need to be excellent at all areas. And I mean, I started my law firm hiring women who are coming back into the workforce after having children very purposefully. I mean, I offer very flexible work environment. I mean, I do not care when people work. We have always been virtual. And so I want to really change how law firm ownership looks. I mean, I don't think it needs to suck to work in a law firm. Like, I think law firm owners can be amazing employers if we, again, put our emotional intelligence into being an employer. And so I want to see more law firms opened around the country like ours, where we have created an exceedingly powerful team environment. People like working there. They, have the flexibility they need. They can be great moms. They can be great lawyers. They have opportunities to get into leadership, to do other things, have, self-improvement. And then all of that being said, the other thing I want to do, because I did, as you know, we said before we started recording, I bought this property on the water. I am going to start running retreats. And initially I thought they were just going to be for women. And I have been in talks with different people, and it is clear to me that a lot of male law firm owners would love this as well. I mean, it's, this amazing place in the Pacific Northwest. I want to offer just an amazingly luxurious but casual place where we can come together as law firm owners and truly connect, so that we are developing those relationships that will carry us through our professional careers, for decades, where we are truly connecting and we're helping each other. We're being referral sources. We're learning together. We're making mistakes together. We're kayaking together. We're hiking together. We're tasting Washington wine together. We're meeting each other's families, and we're really able to connect, because I have found some of the greatest friends in my national connections with other lawyers. And I want to be able to share where we are and what this Pacific Northwest spot has to offer, and allow people to come together and really just breathe. and truly connect with one another, because I think sometimes being a lawyer can be a really siloed kind of thing. And I think people often don't have and I mean true, authentic support that they need. People who know all your problems, and because you know how it is sometimes, like on social media, people will put out all the good stuff. And I mean, I am very frank. I'm like, well, I'm just a hot mess sometimes. I mean, and I'll go on my Maximum Mom podcast and be like, well, this was a crazy week, and this all this stuff happened. I think it's really important that we can be authentic and we can share in all the things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, life is kind of
Absolutely.
like a gumbo, and it's got a lot of pieces to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love, first of all, I love everything that you've shared, and it's really eye-opening to see what it is that's making you tick. I want to go back all the way to the beginning where you shared your vision of changing how divorce is handled and changing how people approach divorce, and really making an impact there. And my question to you is, do you think that significant impact that you're envisioning being possible, do you think that's going to happen through your law firm, or do you think that you need to do something above and beyond that to be able to have this impact on divorce as it's treated throughout the country, or maybe even the world?
I absolutely think it has to be above and beyond my law firm. I mean, it's something that I've been working on, is developing a product. I mean, one of the things, it's just as basic as developing a communication product that would help both the people, just regular moms and dads who are in the process, but also, and probably more importantly, that could be utilized by lawyers, because so many lawyers do not know how to help their clients do this better. Because lawyers, aren't always the most emotionally intelligent people. I mean, a lot of times people go to law school, like, they're not into all the psychology of things. And I think that many times the lawyers either sit back and don't know how to help their clients, or for fear of annoying their clients, they don't come down on them like they really need to, and really help them make changes. And so I would like to develop a communication tool that would help both the profession as well as people who are involved in divorce. And I think it's going to require, I mean, obviously not necessarily right now with COVID, but I mean, developing a speaking, going to conferences and really sharing this. And I mean, this is something that has been kind of in the background for me. And one of the reasons we created the leadership team was so that I could start doing some of the projects that I have had, kind of on the back burner as I've been, growing and managing my law firm. But now that I don't have to spend all my time doing that, there's more time for me to kind of, come out of my own shell, if you know what I mean, and really do the things that I need to do to make the impact that I want to make.
So is there a book in the works?
It hasn't been started, but there's lots of discussions around a book. Yes. Lots
Yeah,
of
it
discussions.
goes hand in hand with what you're trying to do. I mean, um, uh, it would be argued whether a book is the precursor or the
Right.
postcursor, like when, which came first, the chicken or the egg. Um, but definitely a medium that is easy to consume to get your message out there is somewhere. And there's a book in my future too. There's more than one book in my future. There's a lot of books in my future, but the first one hasn't begun to be written. So we're in the same boat there. Although it's been something that I really want to focus on, and that takes me to something else that you mentioned, which is, finally now you've got this leadership team in place. The firm is really operating on its own, and you can kind of focus on some of these things that you've wanted to do to reach that impact that you want to have. And my question to you is, for those listening here, if you can you pinpoint, like, is there a specific size of the firm, or is there a specific point in the journey that a law firm owner can say, okay, when I get to this point, that's when I think I'll be able to stop practicing law or stop being involved in the day-to-day, so I can do these other things that I want to do. You probably couldn't do it when you were just you.
No,
So
no.
what do you think is that point if somebody wanted to try to figure out where they need to be?
I do think it kind of depends on each person's needs, because people will look at it, I think, from a variety of ways, and one would be fiscal, and so like for me, because I'm kind of on the back end of all these kids going to college, we just have one left. I mean, so, I'm looking at one tuition next year, whereas, I've had years where we're looking at, $300,000 a year in tuition payments. So, for me, it's been more like, okay, what fiscally do I need to, to take out of the firm, and what can I put back in the firm? Like for me with this leadership team, obviously it's a big expense to have all these people that are working to run the firm that are not then billing if they were maybe past billable people or, whatever. So I've had to look at it fiscally. And so I would say, not until you get to like a 3 million-ish dollar mark are you able to really start thinking about, putting in this type of, leadership. And I think even, more in the 5 million-ish dollar range, makes a lot of sense. And to me, when you're in that $5 to $10 million, you're really at a place that, you've got the money and the resources. You can really delegate what you need to. I mean, virtually everything, that you need to delegate, you can do that. And so for me, like, I mean, and we are not at the $10 million mark yet, but I mean, that's kind of what in my
Tomorrow.
mind, I would like to get to that $10 million, where we can just feel like we're just comfortable. We're all able to delegate. Because one of the things that's very important to me when we talk about pouring into my team, and this is one of these things that harkens back way to when we started. I used to delegate to this company all the time called Pursuit Concierge, and they're this amazing company in Seattle. Sandra's the owner, and she has just been a lifesaver to me. Well, after delegating to her for months, it occurred to me that my receptionist, who was like a single mom of 2 children, she needed to delegate to somebody, like more than anybody. So we created a benefit in our firm that people could delegate to Sandra, both personally and professionally. And I put no maximum on it. So, I mean, I have not tapped it out at all. I've never said no, and people then delegate. I had an attorney recently who was getting married, and she was delegating to Sandra planning her wedding, literally like
That's
Sandra's
awesome.
finding things. But that allows that person, then it frees up a lot of time. I mean, you know how it is when you're
Yeah.
investigating, finding a photographer, that can be a huge time suck.
Yeah.
And so really being able to get to a place with your firm where you can provide that, where everybody can have somebody to delegate to. Do you know what I mean? So that
Yes,
everyone
absolutely.
is working in their strength.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. One of the things that my business coach has shown me through his own actions is hiring VAs for his staff. So each staff member who has a critical function in the office gets their own virtual assistant. We had a company get staffed up that Brett Tremblay was a guest on the podcast, that was a sponsor at the Law Firm Growth Summit. And Get Staffed Up, you can get a virtual assistant for $1,850 a month. And basically the way that would look is for every attorney and for every paralegal and for every receptionist, every person that has a job in your office, they each would get their own virtual assistant. And if you think about it, you probably get 3 virtual assistants for the price of 1 employee with benefits at a low level employee level. And if you're looking at attorneys, it's probably 5 or 6 of them would be the value of one attorney fully loaded. So it's really a drop in the bucket as far as the cost. You're spending less than a third of their salary to give them a 40-hour-a-week support person. And what that's doing is it's doing 2 things. Number one, it's allowing them to completely offload anything that is not worth them spending their time on. So anything that they can dictate to somebody else and now just oversee, they can hand off to have someone else do. But the other thing is that it's empowering them to learn how to delegate and to learn how to give to somebody else. So when they're ready to take the step into the next role in the company, they can have somebody in-house that reports to them. And it's a natural thing for them to know how to delegate and how to give constructive feedback because they've already been doing it with their own virtual assistant. So that's something that I'm a big fan of. And I think that more firm owners need to think about doing that, not just to bring on a virtual assistant for your firm, but to think about the people that you're paying a decent salary to and giving them an inexpensive support that they can just pass the really, mundane stuff, the $10 an hour stuff that they shouldn't be spending their time on, give it to somebody else.
Absolutely. And teaching your team to delegate is, liquid gold. It is the key to so much success, I think, is, really, I know Molly, I think, is the one who taught me this whole idea of, getting the lowest paid competent person to do every single task and teaching people to constantly be looking for opportunities to delegate. And, but like you say, you've got to have somebody there to receive the delegation. And I think Get Staffed Up, I've used Get Staffed Up many times. And it's an amazing opportunity and they're easy to work with. And, and if it's not a good fit, they'll help you find another one.
Yep.
Which is
Absolutely.
really helpful. And they'll do both virtual assistant, kind of like EA, executive assistant types, but then also marketing assistants, which I think for many law firm owners, that can be a very helpful point of delegation. It's hard to keep up with all the things marketing. We recently hired a marketing director and I made a list of all the marketing things. And I was kind of cracking myself up because I got to like 90 something things that I classified as marketing. And I was like, how do I expect one person to manage all this? And then I thought, well, wait a minute, how have I been managing all this?
Right. Well, you weren't. You were choosing the most important stuff and you were just letting the other stuff sit there. So it's a list of things I would like to do. It's not a list of things I am doing. Right. And that's really where we fall is if you really look at it, there's a lot of stuff you should be doing that you're not getting to. And it's that task list that never gets completed. And it's so easy to just add people in to make it happen. I want to spin this around just a little bit to make a point. And that is, if you look at anybody who is wealthy, look at anybody who is wealthy, they got there through leverage. They either leverage their time or they leverage their money or both, right?
Yeah, ideally both.
You cannot succeed in anything greater than creating yourself a job with a paycheck. If you want anything more than that, you cannot succeed until you learn how to leverage time and leverage money. How do you do that? You do that by buying other people's time, by adding as many hours as you can into your firm from a staffing perspective. So your job is to figure out how to add the cheapest hours and the most productive hours, and then find the right combination of leveraging those hours so that the right people are doing the right tasks. And then money leverage, that's investing in your firm. When you're looking at marketing, you're like, oh, I can't afford $5,000 a month in marketing. No, you can't afford not to spend $5,000 a month in marketing. The only way you're going to get to this, whatever it is that you want to get to, is to actually behave like you're already there. And that requires you to look at your staff that way. It requires you to look at your investments in the firm that way. And that's really one of the things that I like to point out is, like, if you look at a doctor or a dentist or a chiropractor, right? They have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment to get their practice started, right? They don't think twice about it. They go out, they get financing, and they start their practice. You don't have that upfront investment. So you think, oh, I could just open a website, for $20, I can have a website, another $100, I have a phone line, and I've got I'm in business, right? But it's fooling you because you do need to invest in your practice. It's different than a doctor's office. You're not going to be listed on insurance providers' websites as the person who takes that person's insurance, and now they're going to come to you, right? You have to find a way to find your clients, and that's going to require investment. You're going to have to find a way to staff people so that you're ready to receive this massive influx of clients that investment's going to create. So you have to start building your team. And the reason why so many law firms take so long to start to see success is because they have it backwards, because they're trying to do everything themselves. They're trying to step into the success instead of investing in it and planning for it. So I think that it's really important that we look at all of these examples of successful people, yourself included, to understand that, hey, Elise didn't get here by mistake. You got here by really purposefully building a very cohesive team that is able to pull their own weight so that you can sit and think about going and doing speaking engagements, going and doing a podcast, going and writing a book, all the things that you want to do that's going to further your mission and your goal. And that's the last point that I want to make on my little tangent here, is you are very clear on your why. You know what makes you tick. You know what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to achieve. And so many firm owners don't even know why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
You got started with your law firm for a reason. Why? Why did you start your law firm? It was not because you wanted a bigger paycheck. You could have got that working for somebody else. You could have just stepped up your way into a partner role. You could have moved to a bigger firm. You could have found a way to get a bigger paycheck just working as an attorney. Why'd you start a law firm? What is your bigger why? What's driving you? Because you have to be clear on that so that you know that you're building the right things. You know you're making the right investments, taking the right steps. And that's the one takeaway that I have from this whole conversation, is you know exactly what you want to do. And that's really what's driving your success.
Well, and I think it's interesting because I think our why is both, it's not only what we want to do, so we kind of can harken back to it all the time. Like when we're looking at opportunities, we ask ourselves, is this furthering what I want to do? You know, I mean, I literally historically have had on my big iMac, I have a question, you know, does this activity benefit my family? Does this activity, you know, bring me to my next goal? So I'll literally ask myself those things, and which is important to me. But also, I think when we think of our why, it's important because I don't want to at all make people think running, starting, building a law firm is easy. It is hard. And I mean, we can talk about everyone in the world that we know, coaches who, you know, run all these programs about, you know, it's, you know, you can practice law an hour a week and everything will be fine. It is hard to be an entrepreneur. I mean, you have to learn a lot. You have to read a lot. I mean, I feel like I have spent literally 50,000 hours educating myself on all the different facets of running a business. I have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching, no doubt, over the years, you know, learning things and upping my game and being around people who know more than I do, and you know, working 80-hour weeks so that, you know, because of all, I mean, when I was a technician and a visionary and an integrator, you know what I mean? Like it's, and I know you know what I mean. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you don't have that why, I mean, concrete in your head, you find yourself in a funk. I mean, but when you have that why concrete in your head, I mean, you're golden. And even though it's hard, it's invigoratingly challenging. It's not life sucking. But to me, if you don't have your why, when I talk to people and they feel that just horrible life sucking burden of what they're doing, I often ask them, and I'm not a coach, but I often ask them, like, why are you doing it? You know, if it's life sucking, you really do have to step back and ask, what am I doing? And why am I doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you remind me of this this saying, I'm an overnight success 10 years in the making, right? Or I'm an overnight success 20 years in the making. That's typically when you see somebody who's successful and you're like, whoa, they did it. They yesterday I never heard of them. Today I heard of them. They're an overnight success. But the reality is that you don't know what went into it. You don't know that journey. And we've had a bunch of those on this podcast where we get to find out, you know, a lawyer here in the New York area who's like one of the top PI firms in the area and is known across the nation. And he was telling us about how when he got started, you know, he had to literally go and take cases for free so that he could learn his trade, so he can figure out how to be the best malpractice attorney and, you know, in the area. And he just literally took the garbage that other people didn't want to take because they were the least likely to win, and he had to make them winners. And that's how he got started. And you listen to these stories of grit and motivation and sticking to it and taking action, and you start to learn these lessons from them, right? It takes motivation, it takes dedication, it takes sticking to it, it takes taking action. And the challenge is that we're in an age where we expect everything to just happen for us. You press a button and there's a taxi in front of your house. You press another button and the shopping bags show up, and you press another button and you're watching the latest movie. You press one more button and you've got popcorn. There's everything is instant gratification, and you expect that, oh, I'm just going to open my law firm and I'm going to press a button and clients are going to show up, and then I'm going to press another button and they're going to be served. And the reality is that it doesn't happen that way.
No.
Now, it can, with the right research and the right motivation and the right steps and the right investments, you can make things that easy. But and that's what we're doing here on the podcast, is to try and show you some of those things. Right. Earlier today, I interviewed the CEO of Rally. Rally is a piece of software that's really trying to automate and make your law firm self-serving. So somebody could come to your website and buy an already done separation agreement from you. And basically they just go through and answer a questionnaire, and then you just review it and they're good to go. And they never really needed to have an attorney until they needed an attorney. It's a phenomenal world that we're stepping into, but you have to see the opportunity. You have to be very clear on why you're doing it so that you can make sure to take advantage of these things and not get lost. And that's the key, is we get lost in the decisions, and we get lost in the fear of what if this doesn't happen, and we start to not do things and not take action, and we just kind of drift along. And that's why some people take years and years to finally get clear on that and get their journey right. So there's a lot of things that you can do to short circuit this. But like you said, Elise, it's not easy. And I am not standing here saying, hey, this is easy. But you have to be clear on why you're doing it. You got to understand the value of the people that you're going to bring in, what they bring to you, and understand that being able to leverage those hours requires them to have, going back to this parent analogy, what is my job as a parent besides for preparing my kids for the future? It's to let them know that they're loved and to create a security blanket for them so that they have a place where they feel safe. That's my job as a parent. And your job as an employer is the same thing. So if you can't get your employees to feel safe and secure and loved in their position and where they are, they're not going to be doing what you want them to do, because they're going to be worried about those things and they're going to be focused on those things. And you have to figure out how to create this cocoon for them where they can thrive and they can grow and they can turn into these beautiful butterflies. And that's what's going to carry the success of your firm. So there's investment, there's people, there's motivation. And we covered so much on this interview. It's great. It was a great conversation, Elise, and I really appreciate you being here. But we're unfortunately going to be out of time. We don't want to turn into a 2.5 hour episode, which I shared in the green room before we started. When I first started with podcasts, I was listening to Tim Ferriss wrote his book, The 4 Hour Workweek. I really liked it. So I was like, oh, let me check out his podcast. And I listened to 2 episodes and they each were 2.5 hours long. And it was like, he was talking to somebody and they're like drinking wine during their conversation. So they're talking about the wine that they're pouring and they're talking about how it tastes. And I was like, I just used half of my listening time for the week on these 2.5 hour episodes. And I just didn't feel like I got the value I wanted. So I was done. Tim Ferriss, I like your book, but I just didn't like your podcast. But that's me personally. Some people love it. But I'm not going to do that to you guys. So Elise, before I let you go, I want 2 things from you, if it's okay. Number 1, how do people follow up with you, follow you, share, get in touch with you? What is the next step they can take if they want to learn more about you? And number 2, what is one lasting piece of advice that you want to share with our listeners if you had to pick something to just tell them as you're your parting wisdom.
I would say, well, to get in touch with me, I mean, you can just email me at elisebuie@elisebuiefamilylaw.com. And I'm sure we could put that in the notes or something
We
of the
will put that in
podcast.
the show notes.
And advice, my parting words of advice, is to shush the mean girl in your head. And, I think a lot of us live with a voice in our head that tells us we can't do this, or what in the world are we thinking we can do this? And that mean girl just needs to hush. And I think learning to hush your mean girl is probably, I mean, truly a game changer. And
Yeah.
I talk about eavesdropping on my mean girl. And so whenever she's saying things, I ask, like, well, is that true? And then, I ask, like, well, why is that true? Like, where, and I really start eavesdropping on my mean girl. And I question her. I mean, I sometimes put her under cross-examination, and I really can get then out of my own head and not have that negative voice in my head. And I think that is, I mean, such an important part of being able to be a successful entrepreneur, because there's many times you're out there, doing things, and it's sometimes you're all on your own in an island, doing something. And I think it's important that you can have self-confidence and the self-assurance that you know what you're doing, and that
Absolutely.
you're
Absolutely. I
making
love
an
that.
educated decision.
Yep. I love the way that you put that. Shush your mean girl and put your mean girl under a cross-examination. Those are two great ways of putting it. What I share with my clients is action creates clarity. So when you sit there and you're like, oh, I don't know if I could do this, and you start questioning the what ifs,
Right.
that is just preventing you from taking the action, which only means one thing, and that is you are assured to not get the results you would have gotten had you taken the action, because you didn't take it, right? So just take the action and find out the hard way that you were right. Yep. And that it didn't work, but be surprised that it did work, and keep moving forward. So that's the first thing that I would share with what you just shared with us, with shushing the mean girl. And the other thing is that there's two reasons why you would stop from doing something. And one is fear. And the second is a belief that's not really true. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you start to question every time that you're getting in your own way, and you say, okay, what am I afraid of? What is the what if that I am afraid of? And you start to really unpack that to see where the fear is, you will suddenly come to find that it's not logical. It's purely emotional. And when you start to approach it from a logical perspective, you can actually override your emotion by saying, this doesn't make sense, and I'm going to do it anyway. The second thing is the belief. So, and this I find when I'm coaching with my coaching clients, it comes up all the time. They tell me, I can't do X, Y, Z because of this. And it's always with an assumption that something is true. And if you start to question that assumption, suddenly it's possible to do what it is that you weren't thinking you couldn't do. And you need to start seeing those. You need to start questioning those beliefs that you're having and say, oh, well, maybe it's not true. And those two things together will allow you to, from the logical perspective, shush the mean girl and overcome it. Exactly. So yeah, love it. This was an awesome conversation. Folks, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, you want to make sure that you subscribe to our show. You want to hear every single episode that we release. So click the subscribe button in your player. We're here twice a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday. Tuesdays is a solo episode. It's just me, yours truly. Sometimes I have something valuable to share. Other times I may not. Maybe you'll look at me and say, this is like that Tim Ferriss thing I was talking about, and stop listening to the show. Hopefully not. But every Thursday, we've got a guest interview, and my guests are stellar, awesome, amazing people. Elise is just a perfect example. This has been so much information all over the map, but really everything that we discussed is right on exactly what you might have needed to hear. And because we were all over the place, I'm sure that we covered what a lot of people needed to hear. And I love those kinds of conversations. And the last thing is if you really are enjoying the show, just like you, when people Google you, they are going to choose who they're going to pick up the phone and talk to by looking at your ratings and reviews on your website and on Google, and saying, hey, this lawyer has only got 15 reviews, but this one's got 55. I'm going to call the one with 55. Podcast is no different. people are going to be looking at the podcast player. They're going to be like, should we listen to the Maximum Mom podcast by Elise Buie, or should we listen to Profit with Law by Moshe Amsel? Let's see. Well, Elise has got 50 reviews. Moshe's got 20. We're going to listen to Elise. Well, we want to make sure that they listen to, well, you can listen to both, but we want them to check out the Profit with Law podcast. So we need your ratings and reviews. It's so simple. In your podcast player, just click the review button and leave a little note to let somebody else know why they should tune into the show. Until the next time, we will be back on Tuesday. I really hope that you take some of the message from today, put it to heart, and can really do something impactful with your law firm. Take care. That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.